Hello and welcome back to the boatyard, where, as you can see, Twiggy has moved from a temporary trailer just parked somewhere in the middle of the yard up onto proper sticks and props and all that stuff, which means that now accessing the bottom to have a good look round and do any sanding and so on is much easier. I am so much more relieved now that Twiggy is parked here, presumably permanently until such time as I actually finish. I've had a chance to go underneath and have a proper look at the hull, and it's in pretty good nick actually, just needs a bit of sanding. There's a few scratches around the sides which I can fill in with filler. Today's job, however, is to take off the outboard motor and have a look at the transom. I have previously noted that there are cracks in the transom here, and there are also little holes in the fiberglass which will have been letting water in, which means that the wood core behind the fiberglass is probably soaking and rotten. But the only way really to find out is to take the transom off. And I was gearing up to literally chop the whole back of the boat off and see what the wood was like. But just supposing I cut the whole thing off and the wood is actually sound underneath, then I'd have to put the whole thing back together again. So instead, I'm going to drill some holes in it using a hole saw at the top and at the bottom and just poke at the wood and see what it's like. And if it's actually all right, I can then just fill those holes in and carry on, and if it's rubbish, then I will have to cut the whole damn thing off. Now obviously some holes I can cut just as things are. I could easily do one here, for example, and one down there, but it would probably make things easier if I took the outboard off, not least because I'm planning on ditching that outboard and getting another one. If anyone wants to buy a pull start 1980s Honda 4-stroke, which runs perfectly happily, by the way, do let me know. Now, in order to get this off, I have to undo this locking mechanism which is on the screws that hold it onto the back of the transom, and I believe I have a key for that, although I've never actually checked that. Right, how does this go? Where's the actual lock? Ah, there's the lock. Oh, I see. Right. That twists off. Right, as soon as I unscrew these, the motor is coming free. But I need to take off this control rod, which has bolts. And that's the cable, that's the ignition cable, which appears to be hardwired. You'd think there'd be some sort of, maybe underneath all that tape, there is a pull-off connector. And then obviously the throttle, no, that's the gearbox cable, isn't it? That needs to come off. Okay. Spanners then. Is it actually coming off? Or is it just turning round? I think I need to hold the ones underneath as well, do I? This is just turning. Is it turning or unscrewing from that control rod? It's hard to see. It's turning in the control rod, but I don't know whether it's coming out of the control rod. That one is in there. How does that come off? Oh. One nut. Two nuts, which means I think that arm should now just drop down. Yes, out of the, that arm has just dropped down out of the mounting plate. So the steering control is now off. Okay. So I need to take off the throttle, which is this one, I think. Yes, that's throttle, isn't it? And that one is gear. And for that I need screwdrivers. So if that comes off that, then that pin can come off that. Which means that can come out of that, and the gear control is removed. So now there's just the speed control over here, which appears to go into the outboard. That's not helpful. Let's start by taking this off, same as the other one. I've taken the cover off. This is what it looks like inside. There's the oil filler and oil dipstick. There's the 2 spark plugs. There's a very new looking belt that's actually running from the starter, that's the pull handle thing, running down to the actual engine-y bit. That, I guess, is your distributor coil. Going back a bit in my car mechanics here as to how things work on non-fuel injected engines, but that presumably is a distributor coil. This, you can see, is hanging on only by 1 bolt on that side. There's nothing on that side, so... And there's 2 random bits of wire there. That, I'm guessing, is a sensor of some kind, because it's going in the top of the engine there. That's probably a sensor. And then that must be the air inlet, I'm guessing. Yeah, I think that's an air inlet going into there. Anyway, the point is, here's the throttle control going in there, and it bolts on. Can't really see it under there, so I'll need to try and get that off. What I can just about see under there is some kind of split pin. So if I could get that off, that would come out. Oh, it's one of those. Oh, how are you supposed to get that off? Yeah, it's a split pin with the ends bent apart, so I need to put the ends back so that I can pull it out. That's not going to be easy. It's very... You see, what you've got is the throttle cable here. There's this pin underneath, split pin thing, which I need to pull out that way, but there's no space to pull it out, and the ends have been bent round so that you can't pull it out, or that it can't rattle itself out. So I think, in fact, I need to take this metal bit off. So I've taken off the throttle control, which was just screwed in here, and I think if I undo that nut there, I can pull this whole metal bit off and then get to the underside of that. Well, I undid the bolt, which you can see there, and that fell off and that fell off, but it has released this part to the point where I can now see that pin, which I should be able to get a pair of pliers on and pull out. All this just to take this flipping throttle cable off. And then I've got to try and get that back on again, which does have a spring on it, because of course the throttle is spring loaded, so it's going to actually be quite a pain to put it back on there. But, you know, never daunted, onwards, ever onwards. And then this wire, which is the ignition wire, surely there should be some waterproof detachable connector like those ones you use on solar panels, but no, it's just got this grotty pink thing, so I'm just going to have to snip that. And I forgot to bring my wire cutters, which is annoying. Squished those together. Aha! Ha! Look at that. There we go. Right, we'll get rid of that. And now, in theory, that should be able to just lift out of that. Come on. Right, in theory. Theory is a wonderful thing. Why is that? There we go. There we go. Right, it's not that bit I'm trying to get off, it's this bit, but for the purposes of doing this, right, that can now come out of the engine, hopefully. Oh, it needs a bit of slack on it, but it will. Okay, we have the throttle cable off. Needless to say, trying to get the throttle spring bit back in with the bolt through it, with the spring pushing against me as I'm trying to put it back in place, is proving to be incredibly troublesome. Arguably, I don't need to do that now because it's part of the outboard. I'm getting rid of the outboard. I could just take the thing away and do it later. But for my own peace of mind, I just want it back in one piece, so I'm going to struggle on regardless. By some unknown miracle, no sooner had I said that than I got that back in. I moved the gear selector upwards and put this back in. And the trouble is, because it's sprung, you see, the spring was being a nuisance as I was putting it back in. It was pushing it away from where the bolt that holds it in place screws in. But somehow I managed to get it in and I've tightened it up. The only tiny snag is there was a washer on it which I've dropped, which has gone down somewhere in there, never to be seen again. So I'm just going to pretend that didn't happen. The engine is nearly free. So now we turn our attention to this vile piece of wiring, which goodness knows what lurks under here. Let's find out. Why did I not bring my cutters? It would have been much easier with cutters. It's official. The boat isn't going to go anywhere for a while. Not under its own power, anyway. Oh, why didn't I bring my wire cutters? Could have tidied all this up. It's annoying. Right, more rubbish. The outboard is now free to be lifted off. So the question is, how heavy is a 9.9 horsepower outboard motor, if indeed it is a 10 horsepower? Because I've suddenly realised that the cover over the motor is not necessarily the original cover, and that's the one that says it's a 10 horsepower. Nothing on the engine itself seems to indicate what power it is. Anyway, the point is, I wonder how heavy this is. Can a wimp like me lift one off without doing my back in? I'm very prone to doing my back in whenever I lift things. I might give it a test lift and see how I feel. Right, I've undone the little twiddly things that hold it on. Oh, okay. That's liftable. The other question is where to put it when I've taken it off. But it's catching on the control arm. There we go. This may not have been a good idea. It's just going to have to lean there for a while, I think, until I come up with a better place. What we have thus revealed is this spreader plate, which is obviously designed to spread the push of the engine against the transom, which in one sense I am reluctant to remove, but on the other hand, it's been sealed with just loads of sealant gunk down it, and it's coming away from it. Can you see that? Yeah. So I'm thinking take that off. Torx screws, I notice, holding it in place. These ones. So possibly take that one off, at least temporarily. I like the idea of a plate for the outboard to push against. But is that the right one? Or maybe I should just leave it where it is. This is a dilemma. Put a bit more sealant in there, re-stick it. I mean, when the engine pushes, it's pushing against that. Maybe I should do my hole drilling. I could do a hole there to see what the wood is like. I could do a hole here and a hole here. And then I'm also thinking some holes down here. Again, just little holes, and see what the wood is like behind there. And if it's not bad, I only need then fill those holes. I think it does have to come off, and you'll see why if I show you the extent of the damage in the at least gel coat, if not the fiberglass, around the transom. I had a while ago covered all this up with masking tape just to keep the rain out, but, and I'm not sure how well it's going to show up on a sunny day like that, you can see possibly there's a crack here, all the way up here, then there's a crack all the way here. That shows up very well there, doesn't it? And presumably that goes underneath where the outboard mount is. And again here, this is all going to have to be drilled out. Ooh, look at that. Someone's had a go at that at some point. And then it's cracked up the way here as well. Then you've got things like this, which was a hole. And you've got crazy paving here. Little cracks here. And then when we look actually inside here, look at this. It's just, I don't know what the hell happened. It's like someone took a shotgun to it. It's full of little craters. There's a hole there. There's a hole there. So you've got two actual holes. There's another great big hole there. And a hole there. And more damage here. Big crater and another hole underneath it. These holes are why I assume the woodwork behind is probably sodden. Oh, and let's not forget that one there. And that one there, which someone has at least put some filler into at some point. And there's a hole there. That's nice. If I come and shade that, you can see that better. So I'm assuming water will get in there and ruin the wood behind. Now, the actual fiberglass feels pretty solid. I'm not sure how scientific a method knocking it is, but it does feel fairly substantial. But clearly, abominations like this can't be left. So I've bought myself a Dremel, and I bought my multi-tool thing with a grinding attachment on it. So I think this has to come off, and then all those can be drilled out. While I'm here, I've just taken this bung out of the bottom of the boat. Now, why on earth they actually put a removable bung in the bottom of a boat, which, if it had any leak whatsoever, would immediately mean disaster, I cannot fathom. But presumably it is so that when the boat is out on the hard, you can let any water in the bilges drain out that was not pumped out by the pump. I'm pleased to say, despite the fact that the seal around this was completely rotten, and there is actually nothing, I've put my finger in, it's dry as a bone in there, so there's no water in the bottom of the bilges. That is all good, but I will obviously need to replace the seal around that. And there was also, I noticed, some of that white sticky plumber's tape around this as well, but it clearly needs a new seal. But for the moment that can just go in like that. Now, whatever I do, don't let me relaunch the boat without putting a new seal round that. I know what I'm like. I'll just think, oh, everything's fine, and I'll just put it back in. That is not going to seal anything like that. So it needs a new rubber bung, a rubber O-ring. O-ring is the phrase I'm looking for. For the moment, that's fine. I think before I drill holes, it might be lunchtime. Procrastinate a little more. You know how sometimes you're not intending to start something, but you just have a little poke at something. You think, oh, I'll just have a quick look at this. I wonder what this is. I've just done one of those, and it's clearly going to turn into a bigger project. I started poking around with how you take the rubber edging off the side of the boat. So I unscrewed a screw that was holding the end on, and then I started pulling this off. And oh my goodness, A, there was a lot of dirt down there, but B, there's clearly, the boat is formed in two halves. The top half is the yellow bit, and that drops onto the bottom half, which is the white bit. And then the join is where this black rubber seal thing is, and rubbing strake. But between the top half and the bottom half, possibly originally, I don't know, there is some sort of filler between the gaps. And that filler is not really sticking. It's all going to have to come out. filler, filler, and there you can see the top half of the boat and the bottom half. I mean, at least it's easy to fill. If this blooming fender would get out of the way. Alright, time has passed, lunch has been devoured, you can guess what that lunch was, so now I'm going to take the plate, whatever it's called, a thrust plate, I don't know what it's called, the metal thing that the outboard was attached to, off the back of the boat. It is attached with 3 Torx screws and a load of gungy gel stuff which I'll probably have to cut through. That in itself gives a little clue as to the state of the woodwork inside. Tiny bits of wood shavings on the end, and they are dry. I am going to have to chop through this gel. Well, we can clean that up easy enough, just pull all the gunge off. And now scrape some of this off. What I've done is remove the back plate, I've removed most of the gunge that was sticking it to the back of the boat, not all of it, but enough that I've got clear access, if you like, to here. So what I think I am going to do, and I am a little bit anxious about this, but heck, you know, what's the worst that could happen? I always say this in these projects, what's the worst that could happen? I'm going to get my hole saw and drill a couple of tentative holes around here where the engine was pushing, because that'll be the bit that really needs to be solid inside, and we'll see what the state of the inside of this transom is actually like. Wish me luck. I do have something of a dilemma though. Do I go in with a small hole, just big enough that I can see what the wood looks like behind and poke it with a screwdriver, or a big hole so I can see more of whatever the transom is like behind it? I suppose the answer is start with a small one and then bigger as I go. Yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? So we'll start with the tiniest one and we'll see how we get on. There we go. And yes, I'm aware I should be wearing a mask, but the wind is blowing very much that way, and I held my breath just for this first one. I think I'll make a bigger hole and then you can have a look as well. Right, what I have here is a screwdriver. That wood is soaking wet to the touch, and the screwdriver is going straight in. Yeah, that's just delaminating. Look, there we go, it's delaminating. And all that, as expected, is absolutely sodden. How far do we go until we find anything solid? Or do we not find anything solid at all? I don't think we do. A little bit drier. But, I mean, effectively, that's not good, is it? I think we can safely say the transom's coming out. That is disappointing. My next, and I think obvious question is, how far does the sogginess extend? Is it just that back bit where we know there were screw holes and things? Or is it the entire width of the back? Because if I could get away with just doing part of it, I don't know if that's feasible, but if we could get away with just doing the middle bit or something, that might be a lesser operation. I'll drill a couple more test holes and see how we get. The news is not good. This one, rotten, absolutely rotten. This one, rotten. That one, rotten. And the main one, rotten. So I think we can safely assume the whole thing is rotten. Cutting the entire back off the boat is not something that was necessarily on my agenda for today. I knew it was a possibility, but I don't think I want to start it now. That will have to be at a future date, so I'll leave you hanging there. Thanks for watching. Cheerio!